Welcome to the London Property Podcast. This is vlog episode number 16, and my name's Chris Mulry, and this is
Marius Nazare. Welcome back.
Welcome back. So there's been some recent developments in the news this week. First going to start talking a bit about what some industry bodies have been saying regarding the news. RICS, Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, RICS, have had a residential market survey that is conducted across pretty much the whole of the country to kind of get indicators and a feeling for what most professional surveyors are thinking about the situation of house prices and turnover and everything else going forwards. And safe to say it is kind of what you would imagine it to be. What I would say is at the start of the year, the indications were picking up, and a lot of the surveyors were seeing an increase in activity of sales, transactions, house price rises pretty much across the whole of the UK and London. Literally COVID-19 has stopped that in its tracks. Property market's frozen, and this market research survey that kind of came out in just last month gives the indications to this. So a huge amount of the participants who've done the survey are now saying that the market's going to be coming to a halt this year. Transactions are pretty much going to fall off a cliff. But there is signs for hope. They expect next year is going to pick up relatively quite quickly and not be so much affected. But it's all dependent on how long the COVID-19 situation lasts and how long this lockdown lasts. But they have given the government some advice with regards to how we can get out of this crisis as quickly as possible. And from reading some of the most recent news, it seems to be the case that estate agents and coffee shops are going to be the first people to come back to work. And the government, what they've done is they've looked at certain key businesses that have a multiplier effect on the economy. And the property market is one of those industries. So if we can facilitate transactions going along, all of the house builders are going to be propped up and everything else. It could cause a massive collapse, the property industry, if it was down for a long period of time. So it's very important to kind of get it up and running as soon as possible. And Marius, you've got an article which kind of talks about a suggestion that RICS have put out there, but also a few other industry bodies. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So part of that report, RICS came out saying that the government should really implement a stamp duty holiday for buyers in order to essentially help the property market recover a lot quicker. So in effect, there wasn't any specific timelines for how long it should be, etc. But their argument is that we've had this period, and we still don't know how long it will last. But their argument is that as soon as the lockdown is lifted, and let's say, like we've heard some speculation in the news that estate agents would be one of the first kind of businesses and people to get back to work. Their argument is that there is obviously pent-up demand, and we've seen that in January, February, and a bit of March. There are people who still want to move. There are people who still need to sell, etc. And a stamp duty holiday would really boost the market and really help it recover very quickly to essentially cover this period that we've had without any transactions or very little transactions. So they really recommended that the government take this action and they look at this very closely in order to really help the property market. We think it's a great thing if the government do decide to implement this once they lift the lockdown. Essentially, it would really give confidence to people, because obviously there are people who are concerned and people who are saying that the market is going into, free fall crash, etc. So I think if the government do implement the stamp duty holiday where they freeze this kind of stamp duty or part of it to boost the property market, it would really create a lot of positive movement for the industry. And then you've got the National Federation of Builders, NFB, which have also supported this argument. So you're now getting a few industry players who are essentially calling for this kind of stamp duty freeze. I think the government are obviously going to be looking at this And like you said, ultimately, the housing market has a multiplier effect on the economy. So if we can get it back and running as quickly as possible, it's going to have massive advantages and benefits for the whole of the economy. So I think the government will potentially look at this, and they might do something. Obviously, this is early stages. It literally only came out at the start of this week. We're Friday, at the 17th of April. But I do believe if they do this, it's going to be very positive. Plus the pent up demand that we were starting to see build up. Again, that could potentially unlock more transactions post COVID-19 and post the lockdown. So I think everybody would be in favor of that. Definitely, we think it's a positive thing if they implement it for a period of time to really help that V-shaped recovery, if some people say. Obviously, last week we said it could potentially be a U-shaped recovery. It really depends of how much longer we're going to be in lockdown, but definitely something positive, something that the government should review. And I think over the next couple of weeks we're going to see some kind of announcement to that, especially as we get closer to potentially easing the lockdown. Now we're still going to be in lockdown for 3 weeks. That's being confirmed the other day. But after the 3 weeks, we might be seeing some kind of for the government to relax some of the rules. So I think they might announce something perfectly timed with that.
I really hope they do, and I don't think they would do it. The government wouldn't do this just for the sake of saving estate agents. I think there's a lot of house builders all across London. That there's a boom in the help to buy sector, isn't there? Yeah. So if house builders all of a sudden, a couple of them start to go to the wall, and it's kind of a domino effect of several of them going under, that's not going to be very good headline reading. Where London is, there's a massive shortage of properties for Londoners, and they need to be built. So we can't really afford to be having house builders going kind of bust that are trying to create this accommodation across the whole of London. So they are going to be squeezed more than kind of anyone in these times, because they can't do any construction. They're unable to kind of get any sales going. And I do think first-time buyers with a situation such as this, they're going to be a lot more nervy than potentially somebody who's already kind of got 1 or 2 or 3 properties. So I do feel that end of the market is going to struggle. Those developers are going to struggle. And I think this, for me, would be a very easy way out of it for the government, because I think if there was a stamp duty cut, I think all of the transactions that we've got that have been parked, like literally just been pressed paused, not withdrawn or anything, they will come flying back in, I'm sure, if there's a stamp duty holiday. It'd be a massive incentive and bonus. They've not pulled out anyway, they're just pausing it. So if that did happen, I think you would see a big, big positive. Everyone who's across the whole of the estate agency in all of the UK could come straight out of furlough. The government doesn't need to kind of foot the bill for that. All they need to do is just cut the tax, and bang, you've got you've got a big influx. And a big kickstart to the economy. So I really hope that they do go through with it. And,
Yeah, absolutely. It is I think kickstart is definitely the right word. It would really boost things. And obviously the housing market has so many related industries, which, the housing market supports these industries. So you can see why they're looking at it and saying, well, actually, the housing market has a multiplier effect on the economy, and it would be one of the first kind of sectors to be boosted by the lifting of the lockdown measures. So we would definitely want to see that. I can't wait to be back at viewing properties and meeting clients and buyers. But I guess we'll have to see how things develop over the next 3 weeks. All in all, obviously, this again depends very much. I think it's important because there will be people who are concerned, and there's people who are saying the property market is going to crash. What is really important is to distinguish the differences between the property markets, because obviously your other parts of the UK will be more impacted by what's going on. whereas other parts might be less impacted. For example, like prime central London, just because you have a different demographic of buyers and sellers. But obviously, ultimately, you know, in a way, everyone's affected. But certain parts will suffer a little bit more than others. But this stamp duty holiday will definitely benefit the whole country. That's for sure. So we hope it does come in, and we hope the lockdown, and we hope that obviously COVID-19 goes away sooner rather than later. But ultimately, that's essentially what kind of the most important news article of the week has been. There isn't, apart from other kind of news about agencies furloughing staff and trying to reduce costs in order to survive and weather the storm, there isn't really anything that would ultimately benefit for us to kind of bring into today's news. Is there anything else that you want to add, Christopher, before we wrap up?
All I would say is, with regards to the article about the RICS, they did comment and say that it's not. They don't normally make these sweeping suggestions because they're a very conservative body in industry, and they wouldn't make this suggestion and put their neck out there unless they thought it was really kind of worthwhile to do. So I really do hope the government kind of takes that advice seriously, and keep our fingers crossed that we can all be back up and running and as soon as possible.
Hopefully, yes. So we don't have all these technical difficulties that we've been having with recording over Zoom, you know, like microphone and headphones and all these kind of different things that keep tackling us every time. But yeah, that's it for this week. I guess we'll see you guys next week. It's going to be, again, a very short kind of condensed version of the London Property Podcast. But we'll try to keep you in the loop with what's happening and what kind of the feel is from the ground. Obviously, there isn't a lot of new business going, but we still have a few things. We've got deals to keep together. Obviously, like I said, there are some deals who have been put on hold, not withdrawn, but I guess that is expected given the current context. So yeah, we'll be back next week with another episode of the London Property Podcast. Thank you everyone for paying attention. See you guys next week. Bye.
See you next week. Bye.